I'm sitting here with writer Lindsey Catanzaro. In high school, she wrote a novel called Finding Harmony, and she's worked various behind-the-scenes roles on many films, including My Acting Coach Nightmare and The Roaring Game. She just wrapped work on Bad News and The Doorstep and her own proof-of-concept film, and she is currently working on a screenplay of Edgar Allan Poe's Masque of the Red Death. She's going to share some of her favorite books, films, and writing tips with us. So, Lindsey, thank you for sitting with us.
Thank you so much for having me. So today I would love to go through some of my favorite books and films, and then also some writing tips that have really helped me out along the way, just things that I've considered and really helped me improve with the craft overall. So really appreciate that. I'll go ahead and start with books here. So my first one that I'm going to mention is currently my favorite author right now. Her name is Emily St. John Mandel. And the first book I read by her was called Station 11. It is such an incredible story. It weaves together, she is a master at weaving together timelines and characters, and the way she does it, you always hear that phrase as a writer, show, don't tell. She is this author that has mastered the way of telling, and that's something I just love about her. She's bold, she's just upfront, and her books read kind of like a screenplay, so I really do love her stories. And Station 11 was even adapted into a show by the same name through HBO, and it's to me, I do still love the book more, but I think it just proves that her style of writing definitely does fit that form well also. So I currently love her and all of her books right now. My second book that I'm going to mention here is, might be the wild card in my list. It's called Becoming Supernatural. It is by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he is someone that really studies the mind and the body. He is really interesting to me because he's very much rooted in science, but also psychology and theory. He's someone that I would say really understands just, the human condition and how to get what you want out of who you are as a person, your best version of yourself, but also just out of life in general. I really liked his books for that book, Becoming Supernatural, for that specific reason, and would highly recommend that to anyone who's just kind of searching for themselves or anything within their life, any kind of situation that they're going through. Would highly recommend that book. As far as my third book here, I have God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This one was popular a little bit earlier this summer, 2025, and I loved this book. It was a really good drama mystery about a couple kids at camp, but how it ties together is so much more than that, and I really loved it just for how she's able to seamlessly bounce between characters and kind of slowly unravel the mystery. I absolutely loved it, so definitely would check that one out as well.
I feel like that's definitely hard to do because to get attached to all the different characters is not an easy task, to care about them. So
yeah, no, not at all. And the way she does it is just amazing. She does a really good job of crafting each character's individuality.
Kind of making them more 3D.
Exactly.
Off the page a little bit.
Yes,
yeah.
So they don't all sound like the same person. So I love her book for that. And I'm going to look into hopefully more books by her soon. She's definitely a newer author that I've discovered, and after reading God of the Woods, I can't wait to jump back into more of her books. This one isn't a book, but is definitely one of my favorites, Masque of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe.
Your future screenplay.
Yes. So I've been obsessed with this story since I would say probably 6th grade. We had to read it in English class, and I wasn't looking forward to that.
I'm just jealous you got to read one that was besides The Raven. Everyone
Yes.
else gets stuck with that one every single year.
Yep. So we did have to read The Raven. We got to read Masque of the Red Death, and I think we got to read one more of his that year. It might have been The Black Cat. And something about this one just stuck out to me. I remember finding it in my folder in a folder of mine, like when I was in college, like freshman year of college, and it had been when I was looking to work on screenwriting and more like delving into that form. So that's when I kind of had the idea of creating a screenplay adaptation for it. But besides that, you know, the actual story itself, it's one of those where it's definitely wordy, and the subject itself is kind of dark, as Poe is. But underneath all of that is like a really good story, and it's just you know, a kind of dark fairy tale almost, I'd say. So I think being able to present that on the screen would be awesome, and almost like translate it so that people can appreciate the story for itself, even underneath all of Poe's like wording and all of that. So I just think that's a story that still sticks with me because of the messages behind it and just the initial concept behind it and the kind of darkness of it all.
It's always interesting when you go back to material that you learned in school, like movies or books, and at the time you were like, I cannot stand that my teacher is making me watch this, why is this so boring, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden you go back to it, and when you're an adult, and it'll have a whole new perspective, and you're just like, what? This is earth-shattering. How did I not appreciate this at the time?
Yeah, I definitely found that. And with a lot of his stuff, and I mean Shakespeare also, like it's one of those things like you're made to read, and then once you actually see it performed, or there's some point where it just clicks, and it's really nice to be able to appreciate that kind of work for what it is. And for me, that was one of those first moments where it happened for me, and that was with Masque of the Red Death. So big advocate for that story. My last one here, also a little bit of a wild card, but I wanted to make a good variety here. So this one is a book that I just read recently. It's actually a children's book. It was so cute. It is called The Little Ghost Who Was a Quilt. It's by Real Nason. Hope I'm saying the name correctly. And it's just such a sweet story. It is about this ghost, and everyone in his family, they're all sheets, so they all float around and, you know, do like normal little ghost things. And he's a quilt, so, you know, it describes him in the book as like he's slow and he's colorful and he can't really like hide, and how that kind of hinders him growing up, and he thinks that's like his downfall. And then he winds up being discovered by a little girl because she's cold on Halloween night, and she like wears him because he's a quilt. And it is the cutest story about like accepting yourself and like how differences can kind of, you know, be your best trait sometimes. And I just thought for a children's book, like it was so cute and so unique. And yeah, so if you have any kids, anyone that's listening,
well, I
highly
feel like
recommend.
Children's books, it's such a simple concept, but as you get older, sometimes when you go back to them, the favorite stories, it's so imaginative in the way that it tells it. You're just like, oh my god, wait, this lesson is presented this way, and it's so sweet, and it's so not how I would have ever thought about it, but it's why there's children's authors and why there's some that do it well and some that don't.
Yep. No, exactly. I think the same thing. With this story, I'm not sure, I'd have to relook at the year of it. I think it's a relatively new one, but I wish I got to read it as a kid. It's just one of those where I think I would have appreciated it as a kid also. So I did buy the book, so I do have it. And yeah, that one's definitely probably the newest one that I've read from the list here. I just thought it was really cute.
So now that you have some films that you were going to tell us about, some of your favorite films that have either stuck with you or inspired you or maybe motivated you to get involved with film or make films of your own.
Yeah, definitely. I have a little variety list here as well.
Yeah, of course.
My first one here I wanted to mention is called Imposter. I'm a big fan of like really unique concepts, and to me this film was really that. It's a short film. It's directed by a director. His name is Chris Esper, and I was really lucky to be able to work with him a couple times on two of his shorts, not this one, but he has such an eye, and he's a writer, what I loved about this film is how it depicts like anxiety and imposter syndrome. Every character in this film has, they play like a regular, like everyday person. They have a child with them that looks just like them, and it's supposed to be like a version of themselves that is constantly judging them and, everything that they do. So I just think it was so powerful, and he's local too, so he's incredible, and it's just one of those like unforgettable short films, and
It's almost too real.
yeah. So a lot of these on this list are, I would say, films that I just can't seem to forget, whether that's in a good way or a bad way. So I would definitely say, that, especially as a short, to be able to have such a powerful message with that in such a short amount of time, I really, really appreciate that short. My other movie here, second on the list, is Kiki's Delivery Service. Of course, I had to include this one. I actually only saw this movie recently. It was like last year. And I absolutely loved it. I had no idea what I was missing. It is such a comfort movie. It's so nostalgic. I just feel like the way it's depicted as like a young girl growing up, it just meant so much to me. And again, it's just one of those that I can't, I don't remember every specific scene from it, but I remember such the nice comforting feeling that it gave me when I watched it. And I'm probably gonna watch it again before this year is over. And it's just one that, again, I really loved, and I did get to see it in theaters when it came back out, so that was a cool experience.
That's a blast, because that's how the classic films or really amazing animated films should be seen, because you miss all these little details.
Exactly, you need that big screen.
You do, but it's funny that you bring this up, because I feel like I found myself going back to films that at the time I saw, but I see them now completely differently, because all of a sudden I'm looking at it and it's how girlhood is depicted.
Yes.
Or how the daughter-mother relationship is presented, and it feels really just like a warm hug, all of a sudden I kind of
it
feel
really
like
does,
I find myself not mending that patch, but reaching back to it all of a sudden. I'm like, how is it? Oh wow, I miss that. That feeling is so pure.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's definitely one of those that, at least for me, especially seeing it recently for the first time, I have to watch it again just to, I think, appreciate it all over again. So, like I said, I will be doing that. My next one here, third, is V for Vendetta, and that is another, people have very controversial opinions on this movie. I know it's from the graphic novel by Alan Moore. It's one of those movies, again, conceptually just had me captivated. It's the environment that it's placed in, the society, the politics behind it. Again, a lot of people have many different opinions about the movie, but to me, just the overall concept, it's one of those unforgettable ones, in my opinion. And I love how intentional it is. I love it's very literary, you get that sense from it, whether it's the symbolism of the V and 5, and there's just so many threads, I would say, in this film that are so subtle and powerful. I think it's just one of those that, again, it needs to just be rewatched a couple times, just because how nuanced it is and how detailed it is. And it's one of those movies where, as a writer, I'm like, wow, this is just done really well. Regardless of, the topic is hard and it is very political. So, a lot of differing opinions, but I think concept-wise and story-wise, it's just a really powerful and well-portrayed story.
But I feel almost like that's what makes a great story or a great film, is when people are allowed to pull away multiple perspectives from it. It's not one message slamming you over the head.
Yes.
Or telling you what it's trying to be. When people are allowed to make up their own mind about what they just saw, it has more impact, in my opinion, because it becomes personal.
Yeah.
So would you say this is definitely one of your favorite book to movie adaptations?
I would love to say that, but for me, I actually, I need to read the graphic novel, and I'd love to compare them, because that movie I only watched a couple of years ago, so I'd love to buy a copy of the graphic novel and then be able to see what's similar, what's not. I love analyzing adaptations like that. So I think that's
as a screenwriter, it's not to interrupt you, but it's probably helpful to see what was cut, what was put in,
exactly
what was adapted because it's film, not on page. It's a lesson.
Yeah, no, I think especially with that one in particular, that would be so, well, one, inspiring, but two, just so helpful. It would be a lesson to learn how that gets put together. So all right, so the next movie I have here is Rear Window, and that is by Alfred Hitchcock. So for me, Rear Window was one of the first Hitchcock movies that I saw, and I thought it was just so impressive, even for, I believe it was 1954, how it just invokes that claustrophobic feeling to it. And I even read that I think it was built all on a soundstage or something like that. So the amount of effort that went into it was so incredible. And I just think that it does a really good job exploring a theme that is kind of less common in films. I think it's more common today because of social media, that voyeuristic kind of aspect to life that we have now. But especially for back then, Hitchcock does a really interesting job of exploring that, and I really love it. So again, that claustrophobia, that suspense, and just the idea of being nosy and being curious, and so that is definitely one of my favorites of his. I also love The Birds, and I love Rebecca, but Rear Window made the list because, again, it's just one of those unique, memorable ones to me that I think just invokes a unique kind of takeaway from it.
I think what's so impressive about that movie, because it is a classic, obviously, is it's almost done like a play. Like you said, it's a soundstage.
Exactly.
So the building itself becomes a character.
Yes.
So it sort of feels, you can't leave the space. It is the part of the film. So, but you're not seeing anything really new pop in.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that's so amazing, is how do you keep it moving the way you would a play? How do you keep it moving? How do you keep it moving forward? How do you keep introducing new things? But you're not really involved. It's very interesting, the whole idea.
Yeah, 100%. I think just stylistically how it's told, and how, like you just said, how to even keep the plot moving forward. We're there. So I think as a writer, as a creative, I think that's a great movie to be able to reference and see what you can really do with A, simplicity, but B, that kind of setting as well. So, 100%. I love that. My last movie I have here on the list is called Promising Young Woman, and that's by Emerald Fennell. This movie I went in blind to. I think I just saw it at home one day, and wow, the first 15 minutes, I want to say, of this movie, the twist in it, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to say too much about the ending either, but the twist in this movie is so powerful, and to reference everything that it does about growing up as a woman, a young girl, into a woman, and life experience, it is so powerful. You watch this movie and some moments are more lighthearted, but the entire concept is built around something so tragic, and it's just one of those things that can't even really be talked about in any sort of way besides that. And it's just how she brings it across and how the narrative moves. Again, I don't want to say too much about it, but the main character and how she acts throughout this film, considering what has happened to her and her friend, and it's just incredible. So through not wanting to say too much, like I said, it's just a brutal, smart, and raw kind of movie, and I would definitely recommend to anyone that's interested, and especially just about being a woman. And yeah.
In general, I feel like Carey Mulligan never gives a bad performance. So
No.
if it's comedy, if it is powerful, whatever it is, she can handle it. She has so much talent. She really is.
Absolutely.
She's
Like,
really
I
wonderful.
got toward the end of this movie, and there was, like, another twist, and I just remember crying, and I was like, oh my gosh. And, yeah, I guess overall, people could argue that it is a little bit, like, it's not really 100% realistic toward the end. But I think it drives home such a critical point that doesn't even matter. It's just like the message that's behind it that's so powerful. So I definitely had to add that one onto my list also. That was one I recently saw maybe within the last year or so again. So definitely one that I will not be forgetting anytime soon. So now that we just finished up the movie portion, I do want to go ahead and jump into some storytelling tips. Again, these are kind of just things that I've gathered along the way that have really helped me, and just especially some of them just to stop and think about and consider. Some of them are things you can do in the moment. Some of them are things you can do during the editing process. So hope these help. So my first one here is just wanted to mention some shortcuts, and I know this is a very small one in the grand scheme of things, but any type of shortcut, so like Control F, trying to find something in your documents, always a big one for me, especially with editing. Control G, so trying to again find something, but you can also replace certain words like in mass amounts, so that's super helpful. Control Z, just deleting. And then just bold, underline, italic, that kind of thing really helps just to keep your editing organized and your drafting organized and just kind of make it efficient. So I found those super helpful along the way there. One of my processes here that I wanted to talk about was I'm calling it the writer's laboratory. So basically, when I'm writing drafts, I find it really helpful to keep another draft of old pieces of writing from that same story, let's say. So I feel like just for me, and in talking to some of my writer friends, a lot of us get hung up on, we read something and we know it needs to change, but we don't know how, and so we're afraid to hit that delete button. And so for me, it's super nice knowing that I can almost have that little laboratory. It's just a document with all pieces that I either choose to delete from the original draft, or just pieces that don't quite fit where they should anymore. So I move them from the original document to this laboratory document, and in case I ever want to use them again, I can just copy and paste them back in. So it eliminates that whole fear of the delete button. Another thing that's helped me a lot, especially recently, has just been finding my space. So I know a lot of people say oh, it's about finding the time and everything like that to be creative, but for me, I've found that if I find the space first, then I'll find the time. And so that's just looked like anything from finding your mental space or your physical space. Also, maybe that's a favorite coffee shop you like to write in. Maybe that's a specific chair at your house, or a specific side of your bed. So things like that. And once you find, or at least for me, once I find that space and I keep repeating being in that space, then it helps me just get into the pattern and the good habit of being in that creative space as well. And I just find that the words and creativity start flowing faster. Another one of my tips here that has been an interesting journey for me, especially recently, I feel like I'm calling this the only child character, because I feel like a lot of my main characters, I start off with them and they're so important to you and you want to put everything possible into them, and they have to be perfectly flawed, or they have to be all these things that you envision, and not to mention that, but also somehow they're connected to you, and so that makes it scary and vulnerable sometimes. And so what I've found in this, and reflecting on myself and my own characters, is sometimes this actually hinders the story and hinders the character. It makes them either too perfectly flawed so they're unrealistic or people can't relate to them, or they're just too flat and there's no dimension to them because they're so perfectly crafted. So this has been, like I said, a recent journey for me, like the past year, and one character in particular that kind of made me had this thought and this breakthrough of like, oh, this is what's going on here. So just, it helps me, I know, to remind myself that I'm not my characters, and to kind of just let them surprise you and write the story as you do. So that's been really helpful for me recently. One of my other tips here is implied dialogue, and this has been super important to me recently, especially in getting into screenwriting. So because with screenwriting you have such little amount of pages to kind of get a whole story out there, dialogue has always been important, but I think even more so in screenplay because of what you're saying in between the lines. So we know about this in poetry and things like that, but it's just as important in prose and in screenplay because it's not what your character's saying, but how they're saying it. It's so easy to be able to tell that on the screen when it's a visual, but when you first start out writing, it's not as apparent, but it's so important and it's so critical, and it's something that I absolutely love. Like when I read other writers' works and I can see how much effort they put in implying and having these entire stories in between like the spaces of the dialogue and just how the character is saying certain things. I love that. It's like sometimes it's foreshadowing, sometimes it's just hinting at something, and sometimes it's just giving us a little inclination of who the character truly is. So recently that's just something I've really come to appreciate in reading and writing as well. And my last one here, I'm calling it the architect, and the architect referring to the author, because the author isn't always the narrator, and that's always been an interesting concept to me. Like no matter what tense you're writing your story in, the author isn't always the narrator. So the author is, the architect, and format-wise, it's been really interesting to reflect on how exactly pieces of writing get put together and how they're threaded together. So anything from, like just looking at the paragraphs, looking at the dialogue, and I think structurally it's really interesting to find where you as the writer or the author spend the most time. Meaning, are you like spending time describing things in the present moment? Are you having your characters or anything jump into the past, talking about past moments? Are you addressing a future concern? Are we in the character's conscious? Is it in italics and we're totally in their thoughts right now? So being able to kind of see where you are at as the writer and then step back, and again, this is probably more of a final draft, like editing process tip, but it's super helpful to be able to know where you put your most time and energy, and also for the sake of variety, to keep a reader interested and know how to weave those aspects together to create a really good narrative.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsey, for all your time and all your advice, all your recommendations. Definitely enjoyed talking to you, so thank you so much, and best of wishes with all your projects.
Thank you so much for having me.